I'm telling you, there's nothing that makes your heart stop quite like having a gun pointed at you for doing absolutely nothing wrong. And that's exactly what happened to me. Asterisk before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you are listening. Your support means everything. All started on a random Wednesday afternoon. I was heading back from the gym, just like I always do, taking the same route home. Nothing special. I was exhausted, but good exhausted, you know. The kind where your muscles feel sore, but it's the kind of soreness you earn. So, there I was, just minding my own business, cruising down the road near my neighborhood, when something bizarre happened. I'll never forget the moment I saw the two dudes standing near the sidewalk by the entrance to my neighborhood. They were both wearing tactical vests with the letters HOA on them. Yeah, you read that right, HOA. I thought it was a little weird, but hey, I'm no stranger to the oddities of suburban life. I didn't think too much of it at first, but as I got closer, I noticed something felt off. They weren't holding clipboards or talking to residents. No, these guys were standing there looking like they were waiting for something, or maybe someone, and then, without any warning, the guy on the right, the bigger one with the buzz cut, stepped in front of my car, holding his hand out. I hit the brakes, just in time to avoid a collision. "Hey, you need to stop right here," he barked, voice sharp and commanding. I frowned, not sure if I was hearing things. "Excuse me," I asked, my hand hovering over the gear shift, ready to roll if this was some kind of prank. "We need to talk to you." The guy's tone was aggressive now. He took a step toward my car, hand hovering at his waist. I glanced at the other one, who was standing behind him. This guy, who had a more laid-back demeanor, had a radio clipped to his vest, and he was looking at me like I was some sort of suspect. I started feeling that old familiar sense of unease in my gut. Something wasn't right here. I rolled my window down just a crack. "What's going on?" "I'm just trying to get home." I looked around, scanning for any signs that these guys were legit. There were no official uniforms, no badges, no squad cars, nothing. Just these two guys with HOA stamped across their chests. "You're not supposed to be parked here," the guy with the buzz cut said, now with his hand on his belt, which struck me as odd. No one had been parked in front of my house. No one was even in my street's cul-de-sac, for that matter. Not supposed to be parked where? I asked, my irritation rising. I wasn't about to let these weirdos pull me into some HOA nonsense. "This is a private street," the guy said. "You need to turn around and leave." Now, at this point, I realized they had no authority to tell me anything. This wasn't some HOA board meeting, and I sure as hell didn't owe them an explanation. I wasn't even on my street yet. And why would they be enforcing something like this out in the open like this, anyway? My patience was running thin, but I still tried to keep it calm. I started rolling up my window, ready to drive around these two wannabe cops. I had no intention of sticking around to argue about parking spots, especially with people who had no clue what they were doing. But before I could even put my foot on the gas, the guy with the buzz cut did something that froze me in my tracks. He yanked out a gun and pointed it directly at me. My heart dropped. "Step out of the vehicle," he ordered, his voice low, but deadly serious. The barrel of the gun glinted in the late afternoon sun, and for a moment, all I could hear was the sound of my own breathing, my chest pounding against my ribs. I stared at him, still sitting in my car, frozen. There was no question about it. This guy wasn't kidding. "Get out of the car." "Now," he repeated. His finger was on the trigger, his arm locked steady. I had been in tense situations before. This wasn't my first brush with danger. But something about this felt off. I wasn't sure if these guys were real cops or if they had just stolen some police gear, but I wasn't about to find out the hard way. I knew I needed to get out of there, but I also knew I couldn't just give them the upper hand. I took a deep breath. I didn't make any sudden moves, just slowly unbuckled my seatbelt. I didn't want to make the wrong move and escalate things further. My mind raced. I thought about how to handle the situation. I wasn't going to be intimidated by some fake HOA cops. But I wasn't about to play a game I didn't know the rules to either. And that's when the other guy, the one who had been standing behind, spoke up. Dude, just let him go, he muttered, looking at his partner like he was second-guessing the whole thing. I caught a flicker of doubt in his eyes. But the buzzcut guy didn't budge. If anything, he looked more determined. Shut up, the buzzcut guy growled. We do this my way. You want to end up on the news. That's when it clicked. These guys were trying to play a role they weren't equipped for. They were trying to intimidate me into doing something, but they had no idea who they were dealing with. Now, let me be clear. I wasn't about to get into a shouting match with some wannabe cops who had no real authority. But I couldn't just let them keep threatening me either. I leaned back in my seat, and I spoke slowly. I think you've made a huge mistake, I said, my voice calm but firm. You want me to step out of the car with a gun pointed at me. You want to make my day harder than it needs to be. The guy didn't respond, but his grip on the gun wavered for just a second, and in that instant, I made my move. I'm not proud of the way it went down, but I did what I had to do. I'm a Navy SEAL, and I wasn't about to get taken down by some weekend warrior with a pistol. Before either of them knew what was happening, I slid my seat back and dropped to the ground. I moved fast. I kept my hands visible, my posture calm, and without even thinking, I was on my feet in front of the buzzcut guy, my own hand on my holstered weapon. What the hell do you think you're doing? I asked, my voice low, cold. It was the voice I use when I'm in control, when I'm dealing with threats head-on. Both of them froze. The guy with the gun took a step back, his face draining of color. His hands started shaking. I'm Navy SEAL, I said. You're in way over your head. The tension in the air was palpable. The guy with the gun didn't know what to do with himself. The other guy seemed to shrink in on himself, stepping back slowly. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the buzzcut guy lowered his weapon, and I could see the realization hitting him. He was out of his depth. You're a Navy SEAL, the guy stammered, voice breaking. Yeah, I am, I said, my voice steady. And I'm not the one you want to mess with. There was a long silence as the HOA officers exchanged a glance. Neither of them said anything for a moment. Then, without another word, they both turned and walked away. No apology, no explanation. I didn't stick around to watch them leave. I didn't need to. They weren't worth the trouble. I got back into my car, and for a second, I just sat there, my hands gripping the steering wheel. I let out a long, slow breath, trying to calm my racing heart. What had just happened? These guys thought they could play cop and pull some power trip on me, and it almost worked. Almost. But they didn't know who I was. As I pulled into my driveway and shut the car off, I couldn't help but laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd. They came at me with a gun, and they had no idea who they were messing with. I guess the lesson here is simple. Never underestimate who you're dealing with. You might think you're just some guy driving home, but there's always more to a person than meets the eye. And those guys, well, they learned that the hard way.